Bienvenidos to our 10th annual Hispanic Latino Studies Virtual Summer Institute. I am Baya Diosa, a freshman from Lakewood High School. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the national anthem. Juramento a la bandera. Juro lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramps we fight, we were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, their bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. Now, please help me welcome our program planner from Hispanic Latino Studies, Miss Patricia Trejo.
Hola, bienvenidos. Qué preciosa eres, Valerie. You did such a beautiful job. Thank you for being here with us and singing that beautiful national anthem for us all. Gracias, and we are now excited to be jumping into our 10th annual Hispanic Latino Studies Virtual Summer Institute. I am delighted to see that we have so many from across this great nation. And as we are marking our 10th year anniversary, we're looking forward to another opportunity to provide professional learning that adheres to the Florida Mandate 1003.42p, which requires that all of our students learn about Hispanic contributions made to the United States. So today, we are going to be celebrando the culture, educational achievements, and contributions of Hispanic Latinos that have made a significant impact in our educational system. So let's begin with leaning in and learning so that we can elevate our instructional practices to infuse Hispanic contributions made to the United States so that all of our students have a learning experience that will reflect themselves and others. Help me welcome Dr. Antonia Novello. She is the former 14th Surgeon General of the United States, was born in Fajardo, Puerto Rico. Dr. Novello received a master's in public health from the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health and a doctor of public health. She holds countless awards, including the Legion of Merit, the James Smithson Bicentennial Medal, and the National Governors Association Distinguished Service to State Government Award, as well as a membership in the Alpha Omega Alpha Medical Society. She is just an absolute incredible woman. Dr. Novello received the Don Quixote Lifetime Achievement Award. And in fact, in 1990, Dr. Antonia Novello was sworn in by the Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor to serve as the 14th Surgeon General of the United States Public Health Service. Her appointment marked the two first. Dr. Novello became the first woman and the first Hispanic ever to hold this position. As Surgeon General, Dr. Novello advised the public on health matters such as smoking, AIDS, diet, nutrition, environmental health hazards, and the importance of immunization and disease prevention. Recently, she has helped Puerto Rico to ensure that they are being taken care of as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. She has become the spokesperson and public health advocate for the prevention efforts regarding the virus. And currently, she is involved with Voces and the National Guard of Puerto Rico and testing for COVID-19 and vaccinating the elderly for influenza in Puerto Rico. And at this moment, Dr. Antonia Novello is streaming live with us from Puerto Rico. At this time, please help me welcome Dr. Novello.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. It's a very important time to be talking about who are we as Hispanics, and more important for most of the youth to realize that there is a woman Surgeon General of the United States that was the very first Hispanic. And this is something that they have to realize, which means nothing is impossible. Education got me here. A mother who was a principal of school. She was so great that the school has a name after it in Puerto Rico. And she was the longest serving principal in all Puerto Rico, 69 years of teaching and being a principal. So education has always been in my mind and in my way. And mother always says education is the way out. And then she pushed. So I went to the University of Puerto Rico as a student and to the classes of chemistry and biology, and I became a bachelor's degree in biology, and then I applied for medical school. Obviously, I never told my mother that I had applied because my family is all teachers and nurses. So when I finally got the letter of acceptance, I went to mommy. I thought she was going to have an attack. But mommy, very, very cool, she says, so you have been accepted to the medical school. She never reprimanded me or anything like that. And she says, as long as there's a bank, you're going to go to medical school. Of course, remember, the teachers in Puerto Rico don't make as much money as the ones in the United States, so it was quite a lot to be able to pay tuition. So mommy just says, okay. But it was very interesting that my name is Antonia Coello Flores. And therefore, when I went for my looking into the list of being accepted into medical school, Antonia Coello didn't show up. Antonio Coello showed, and I almost felt that they were not going to accept me because I thought I was the man. But finally, I solved it and I went into medical school. I had an interruption of the medical school for 6 months just because I was born with a congenital defect in my intestines that kept me 2 weeks every single year until I was 18. And I had surgery in Puerto Rico that finally was corrected at the Mayo Clinic when I was 20 in my first year of medical school. Having passed all that, it only shows you that never let anything in the world interfere with what you want to be. You take care of what is needed and then you go forward. Don't feel sorry for what you cannot control. Just go ahead and master the best that you can. And in my sense, I had always a family that was empathetic, not sympathetic. They never made me take advantage of being sick. They just pushed me as I could go along. Went to medical school, and in the process of that, I had a blind date with the flight surgeon of Roosevelt Roads, and we got married on the 30th of May of 1970, and I graduated from medicine on the 29th of May of 1970. Talk about thinking about your wedding and thinking about your Hippocratical oath. It was really something interesting. I went for my internship and my residency of pediatrics at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. But it was really interesting that as I got engaged, it was the first time that I saw that my name was Novello in the black box that they give us as physicians when we graduate. All my friends got very angry that I had changed my name. I say, no, the system changed it for me. We're going to the United States. I do what the United States wants of me. But it was really interesting. Before I left for my internship, my husband said, do you want to be a pediatrician married, or do you want to be a single surgeon? Because I always wanted to be a surgeon. Of course, I'm a pediatrician, and we got married. And then look, karma. God made me the Surgeon General of the United States, something that I have not let him forget. I went to Michigan, and at that time, one of my aunts developed an infection of the kidneys for which she needed dialysis. And secondary to that, she died. And I promised myself that I was never going to let anyone in my family die of a disease that I could detect early on. And that's why I am also a pediatric nephrologist and an adult nephrologist, because in 1970, all the men who had been fellows in the University of Michigan, the very plan called them to serve in Vietnam. So I was left alone to take care of the adults and the children. And talk about trying to do a physical in an adult when all you had done was little people. But again, you survive with what is given to you. Having left Michigan in 1972 just to be able to be a fellowship in kidney, especially doing dialysis and transplantation in children, I went to Georgetown University and finished my training. At that time, there was something that came in the paper that said Bethesda Naval Hospital is looking for a nephrologist. Of course, having married a flight surgeon of the Navy, I thought it was my duty to continue to serve the military. So I went for an appointment. Perhaps that was one of the biggest frustrations of my life, trying to deal with people who are insensitive And most of anything, I have the feeling a little prejudiced. I never let prejudice take me down, but that was something that was really unbelievable. The captain that interviewed me came into the room, put his feet on the desk, proceeded to read the newspaper, and never looked at me. Maybe after he had read the headlines, he looked at me, moved the paper, and said to me, "Do you know that we're looking for a few good men?" and proceeded to read again. I didn't know what to do. At that moment, the secretary came in and says, "Honey, if you really want to join the Navy, don't talk to stupid people like this. Go ahead to the bureau." But I was so incensed that I'm trying to offer my services, a fellow of the University of Michigan and Georgetown, and this guy is telling me that they're looking for a few good men, changing my gender to get a job. Are you out of your mind? So I crossed the Wisconsin Avenue. I went to the National Institutes of Health and joined the Public Health Service of the United States, of where I served until the time that I retired from it. I went to the UNIH, and the only thing that was available was the job of a contracting officer. I became a contracting officer and a lieutenant of the United States Public Health Service, which is one of the uniformed services of the United States, the 7 of them. So from there, I went into grants management, and then one day there was a little argument in the sense that my age group, there were not too many women making it, and the ones that made it were so afraid that somebody else was going to take their job that really it was not helping, it was blocking. So I've always said, if you make me cry, apart from being in a very sad movie, get away. I am extremely angry, and that day I was angry. So I decided to change my job. And as I was changing my job, my boss, which was a woman, told me, in that job, you're going to retire or expire, because I was going to be an executive secretary of the National Institutes of Health of the grant program. And at that time, there was not a physician in that job. It was only PhDs. I don't care who is there. PhDs are true scientists that know perhaps much more than I in how to review a grant. So I went there. I worked 5 years of my life in there. It was excellent. I met the most important people in research and in kidney and bone disease in the United States. And I still to this day, they are my friends, and they have helped me with count letters of recommendation for the jobs that I have gotten myself into. At that time, I wrote a paper that was called How to Be Successful at the National Institutes of Health, writing a grant with less than 20 pages. Neither did I know that my boss, the deputy of the Institute of Grants, was looking for another job, and he was asked to give a lecture at the 400 meeting of the pediatricians at the National Institutes of Health. So he decided to ask for my slides. How can I tell no to my boss? So I gave him my slides for my paper that I had just written, and he went and presented. He felt a little bit bad for me and said, "You can come and you can talk about the font and you can talk about the pages." Sure, I went. When we went there, he gave my slides and he gave my paper, and I sat down. At that time, it was about 3 o'clock, and for very rare moments in life, it snowed in Washington, D.C. He left to pick up his wife. I stayed until 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, the questions started. At that time, the director of the Department of Child Health Institute answered as much as he can, and when he couldn't anymore, he says, "Is there anyone here that could answer the questions?" I saw, after all, it was my paper. Anyway, after I answered every question that you can think of, he comes to me and says, "I never knew you were a physician working in the grants management." I said, "What's the importance?" He says, "Well, never there has been one." I said, "Well," he says, "I want your curriculum vitae." I said, "Not mine. You have to take my boss. He's the one who really is looking for a job." He says, "I want yours." And then one day he called me and I became the deputy of the Child Health Institute. At that time, I think 3 things happened that were crucial. And the most important one is that AIDS in children was discovered to be the most common cause of death below the age of 5. And that was a report of the institute in which I was the chair. The revitalization of the Public Health Corps also was there, and Dr. Coop asked me to chair it. And the third one was that STEM was at the beginning of being important, and I was in charge of making sure that every single scientist woman at the NIH above the grade of 13 had a picture, a description of her work, and we sent that book to every single university in the United States, allowing women to believe that they could be somebody in research. Maybe those were the 3 things that kept me in the eyes of people who were looking for something different. So President Bush becomes the president, Dr. Sullivan becomes the Secretary of Health, and Dr. Mason becomes the Assistant Secretary of Health. things that were very important in my life because they work at the NIH as members of boards, and Dr. Mason was the directors of the Centers for Disease Control. That put me maybe in their eyes, so I get a call saying, the secretary wants to see you on Labor Day. And I said, for what? Did I do something wrong? He says, no, he just wants to see you. They tell me nothing. But I looked and I suspected that something was coming because the government until that time had never had a woman in charge of an agency in the US government. The only one that was empty was HRSA, Health Resources Administration. I memorized everything. I knew everything about HRSA. And because I always believe if you want to say no, then be prepared to say no, but leave them wanting. And for that reason, I was ready. When I went to see the secretary on that morning, he sat me and he says, I guess you know why you're here. I said, no, but more or less, assuming that it was HRSA. He says, well, I want to be able to offer you the job of Surgeon General of the United States. Of course, you must realize that I was supposed to say, what an honor. But he took me so much by surprise that I just said, what? And when I looked, Dr. Sullivan was falling out of the chair, and so was I. At that moment, he says, you haven't heard? I said, no, sir. He says, well, let me tell you what is it that I want for the responsibilities of the substitute of Dr. Coop. One thing at that time that got me more nervous than ever was that I am a true career officer of the Public Health Service. You didn't put me in a uniform and brought me from the outside. I am a career officer assigned to the National Institutes of Health. So at that time, he said everything he needed. And after the 1 hour, he said, here comes this guy who is supposed to be the political in all these jobs, and ask him. And he says, well, she has accepted. And the guy says, what have you done for the Republican Party of the United States? Second mess up. I said, nothing. He said, nothing? He looks like Dr. Sullivan, you messed up 1 hour. I said, wait a second. I am a career officer of the United States, and the Hatch Act does not let me get into politics. That saved the day. It was like God was meaning me to go and be the Surgeon General. I went through the Office of Personnel. I went through the Office of the Chief of Staff of the Presidency. And then I was the longest time of being accepted and the longest time to be confirmed. I was told in November, and I was confirmed on the 9th of March. And for that reason, I became the Surgeon General. I think the education was crucial because when I was in the National Institutes of Health, I decided I wanted to do a master's degree in public health. And they said, yes, as long as you can pay for it and your job is not second class. I did it. Master's degrees in public health from Hopkins because it was only 45 minutes away from the NIH. And then I have the feeling that, and also the doctor in medicine and the pediatrics, make it a little bit more interesting to be the Surgeon General because you really, when you are a public health degree, you speak for those who have no voice. And you do things for people who never know you existed, but you do save lives. So for that reason, one thing that I learned as a Surgeon General is that you have to be sensitive, diplomatic, because you're the eyes and ears of the presidency in the country, bringing back what is needed to be taken care of. And for that reason, the most important thing I learned in life, you have to have an agenda. If you don't have an agenda, like I said, if you don't know where you're going, you are already there. So I went for children, I went for women's health, I went for not drinking for the adolescents, I went for tobacco as always. And for that reason, the Hispanic agenda was also done during my tenure. Little did I know that 9 months before my tenure was over, because remember, this is a 4-year contract that is really approved by the US Congress. Dr. Jocelyn Elders came to substitute me because the presidency changed with President Clinton. Because I was a career officer, they couldn't just send me back. They send me to UNICEF. You have to send me wherever with rank commensurate with who I am. And so from Surgeon General, that was Vice Admiral, I became a Rear Admiral of the Public Health Service, a 2-star rather than 3, and I went to UNICEF. Interesting. Global arena, talking in all the countries, having a passport, going to China overnight. It was an exciting time because the agenda for children was created. But there was one thing at that time that was crucial, the adding iodine to the salt of the world. Coming from the NIH, I thought, my God, I'm here now to put salt and iodine together. I could not believe it that I thought I had been demoted. Mr. Grant, who was the Secretary General at that time, said, you will be with me trying to iodize the salt of the world. And I say, sir, I don't want to be disrespectful, but if you tell me the importance of it, I might be able to be much more excited. He says, well, never look at the goiter of the absence of iodine. Remember, the lack of iodine is the biggest cause of mental retardation in the world. And when leaders who are cruel decide not to iodize, it's because they want to control the minds of their people and the poor. That was it. I think I iodized even the salt of cows in India. And at the end of 1 year, we had iodized the world. And that was quite something good that was done, that I felt good about working in UNICEF. And so, because I am a career public health officer, you have to change 6 times in 30 years. I was then sent to Hopkins, during which time I was in charge of the community systems, and I went ahead and I finished a doctorate in public health with public policy and management included in that. Always pointing to the fact that for me is crucial. Never put a diploma behind your back that you do not feel proud of and that you can utilize it to do good. And for that reason, I finished those 2, and then I became the Commissioner of Health of New York State during the times of September 11. If you want to learn about public health, you have to have been there. It was an incredible time in my life. It was an incredible time because it was the first time where the media would make me talk in English and then make me talk in Spanish. I feel good. I feel good that I was representing the needs of people who had no other ones to tell them what they needed. But at that time, it was crucial for me to say, as the governor suggested, you go into a hospital and you tell them, don't you dare charge them, because at this time, everybody's Medicaid eligible until proven otherwise. And that was excellent. No one was ever asked, what is your insurance, when you went in agony. But I also realized culture is crucial if you want to impact the healthcare of this nation. And I realized that everybody was depressed. And when everybody was depressed, the curve for the money that we use in depression was almost flat. But the curve for heart disease was really high. When I come to realize, when people went to the emergency room and they say, I have a pain in my heart, because in Latin America and in people in minority, that means I have a real pain because I am overwhelmed. They did an electrocardiogram instead of making them go into a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So that's when I realized culture is crucial in the healthcare delivery of this country. I received an award, very important, which is all the governors of the United States declared that I had done a very good job, and that made me feel good because there were 3 months of agony, of suffering, and trying to do its best. Because I realized one thing too. There was a press conference every single day at 2:00 with the mayor, Giuliani, and we never told people what we didn't have the answer for. There were issues that we were concerned. All the armamentary of the Coast Guard was in the second floor below where the tower had collapsed. Grenades, all kinds of armamentarium. We never said anything, but we were very sick about it, because if that would have exploded, all the southern part of Manhattan would have exploded. Freon had been put in the air conditions, all over the air conditions, 2 weeks before the towers went down. Another explosion could have happened. And at that time, we just looked for the antidote, and we also prepared, but we never told. There was enough to be worried about. And then there was a smell in the air, and we were afraid that, knowing that maybe a rat would go into the bodies, we realized that when you collapse 110 floors, there's no way that you can have a leak of anything that was a smell. The smell was basically that when the people flew away running, all the kitchens, all the restaurants, all the foods kept in the places where they were left, in the tables, in the refrigerator doors open. So we took all kinds of traps of rats, put them all over there without people knowing, and we took care of that. So it was a learning experience. It was a sad experience, and we felt really, really that we did the best we could with what we had. It was an agony for the country. It was an agony for the New Yorker. But as always, the New Yorkers came forward and decided to really help every one of us. Blood was donated. Everything was great. And so it was a learning experience that lets you say that when you're in the middle of something like this, you do the best you can with what you have and help the people, if not with money, at least with a shoulder of a kind talk. From there, I went ahead and gave the speech at the Women's Hall of Fame, and they offered me then to consider me for something else. And I became then the Vice President for Women and Children at Disney, because after leaving the public health service, after being in New York, I retired. I came then to Florida thinking, Disney Children, this is a great way for a pediatrician to live her life. And that's what I did. Further on, I became the Executive Director of Public Policy of the hospitals, which are close to 5 in the area. And it was another learning experience because, truly government knows your life, decides how are you going to live it, how is it going to be paid for, and you might as well know about government if you really want to be successful in life. From that time on, I decided then that I finished then my tenure in 2014 at the at the Disney Children's at Florida Hospital, and then at that time came my country. You cannot do enough in your life if when your country needs you, you turn your back. 2017, Maria, Category 5, hit Puerto Rico and left us in shambles. I couldn't get here until the first week in October because all the airports were closed. So I came in one of those airplanes that supervises the drugs in the Caribbean. So I came in one of those bringing about 2,000 pounds of whatever it was needed, from antibiotics to whatever needle was needed, because there was nothing. Came in here, and since that time I have been coming 2 weeks every single month until today, because after Maria we had the earthquakes in the southwest, and at that time I helped the National Guard to establish the tents, took care of the health of the people in those tents, and gave them some peace of mind knowing that there were places that they could not go because their homes were destroyed. I learned a lot of basic knowledge of that, but more than anything, the satisfaction of helping your fellow man is something that you cannot put aside. After that, here comes the pandemic. And in the pandemic, Puerto Rico became the most important place in the vaccination of the United States. We were number one. And then when you're number one and you lower your guard, things happen. Today, we have 87% of our population vaccinated at least with 2, and 92% vaccinated with 1. And still, we have 600,000 people that have not come for their vaccination. Sometimes I wonder, when the availability is there and the vaccine is free, you always feel that I can do that tomorrow. But sometimes, like is happening now, that all the money that is coming for the CARE Act might not be there, especially with the war that is going on. You might as well take advantage of this, because really 4 protect you more than 3. And absolutely today, in where we're seeing that the United States is only 67% vaccinated, it worries me that all the things that comes into the northeast of the United States, eventually all the variants of Omicron will come to Puerto Rico, because the trips to the island are at least 17 times during the day. In the interim, we keep vaccinating with the 4th booster. We keep looking at the variants that are in the United States, but more of anything, this has helped me realize many things that my mother used to say. First and foremost, when you get to the top of your success, don't forget where you come from. And don't forget that you always have to have someone with you to go up. When I took 3 months in Harvard to learn a little bit of leadership, my professor said something that was interesting. He said, life is like a tunnel. Always cross it with somebody else, because at the end of the tunnel, the light will brighten your eyes and you will not be able to see. So always go with 2, because that person can come back and document that you really saw the end, or that person can come while you stay there to secure a place for the next one. Always take care of someone else with you, and always build somebody else with you when you have to learn something in life. The other time is, don't be afraid to tell your opinion. Remember, take more importance in your character than in your reputation. Your character is what you are, what you build through your life. Your reputation is what others believe that you are. So character versus reputation. Equally, make sure that your health physically, mentally, and spiritual are in order and in command of yourself. Only then you can really take care of the people around you. But more than anything, remember, sometimes when you get to the top, one of the hardest things is to be bored by the attention of those people that when you were no one, never paid attention to you. So when the time comes that you have gone up, you are at the top of your life, forgive them. Forgive them. Thanks God that you're there, and look positive of where you have been. And always remember, in life, the best revenge is success. So I want to leave you with something that is a Nigerian proverb that I learned when I was in UNICEF. And it says, not to know is bad. Not to want to know is worse. Not to hope is unthinkable. And not to care is unbelievable. So for that, remember to care for your fellow man. Remember that your education will set you apart. Don't forget where you came from when you get to the top. Take care of your family and all of those that made it possible for you to be there. And whatever you do, don't ever forget to say, I don't know if you don't. If you do that, you will be able to keep away from many embarrassing moments, but more than anything, under promise and over deliver. That's just the way of life, and I assure you that you will be successful. Don't be afraid of the naysayers. Remember, we Hispanics talk with an accent, but we do not think with an accent. And at this time, I have finished, and I will be more than ready to answer for any questions.
Ay, señora doctora Novello, it's just
I,
absolutely an honor to have you here con nosotros.
Patricia, I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I was saying that it was just
Patricia,
absolutely,
I don't hear you.
it's an absolute honor to have you here with us. And we're going to give the audience an opportunity to share their thoughts and their questions and their reflections. I know I certainly have a lot that I want to share and ask, but I want to give the audience an opportunity to do that because they're anxiously awaiting. So I'm going to welcome our sponsor that is kindly helping us today, which is James Haga. James Haga, there you are. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. He's going to talk us through on how you can share your thoughts and your reflections and your comments.
Great. Thanks very much, Patricia. And that was a wonderful, wonderful, inspiring presentation. And as we were just saying, now it's an opportunity to hear from you about what questions you have for Dr. Novello, or things that come to mind, reflections that you want to share as an opportunity to learn through this experience. And so we're going to do that through a thought exchange. There's a couple of ways for you to join and share your thoughts in Thought Exchange. A link will have been dropped that you'll be able to see. And if you click on that link, you'll be brought into the conversation. And if you want to use your cell phone to contribute to the conversation, you can also open your camera, point it at the QR code on the screen that I'm sharing, and a link will pop up on your screen. And here's the question that we're asking. What are your questions or reflections in response to Dr. Novello's presentation? We heard so much incredible stuff about her life journey and her experience in getting to where she is today. Serves as an inspiration and a lot of great wisdom in that presentation. So we'd love to hear from you about what is it that you're taking away, and what are some of the things that you'd like to inquire about further. So please, as you get into the exchange, you're going to have the chance not only to share what your own thoughts and questions are, but also to spend a minute or two considering and rating some of the other thoughts and questions from folks who are listening here today. And what that's going to result in is a sense of priority in terms of what are the issues or questions that matter most to us as a group, so that Dr. Novello can then address those in priority order. So I'm going to be quiet and give you a few minutes to participate, and then we'll use the results and the questions and thoughts that you have generated to dive into a conversation with Dr. Novello. So if you haven't joined, please do. Again, you can click on a link that's been dropped, or you can also use your phone, open your camera, point it at the QR code, and that will generate a link on your phone and bring you into the conversation. We want to hear from you. This only works if people take a chance to share and reflect. So please be brave. It's completely anonymous. There's no names attached. So we'd love to hear from you in this conversation. So Patricia, to jump in here and we can start addressing some of these.
Absolutely. Okay, Senora, the first one here, it says, wow, absolutely inspiring. I actually agree with that. Under promise and over deliver. Lit a fire in me. I can and will do more for my community, my culture, my country. And you did say that culture was crucial, and especially about the language aspect of it as well. James, let's go ahead to the next question and see what they have for us. You are truly an inspiration for us all. As a Hispanic female, what made the biggest difference for you during your early education in kindergarten through 12th grade? Education matters.
I think education matters. And I think in the future, we might have to have 2 degrees to get to the top. And as Hispanics, remember, we tend to be sent to colleges of 2 years rather than colleges of 4, because people forget that sometimes we have to work close to 30 hours to be able to finish. And sometimes it takes 6 years rather than 4. Does not mean that we don't have the intelligence. It's that Hispanics takes care of family before they take care of themselves. But at this time, someday we will be able to go to the 4-year colleges equal to everybody else. But 2 years is better than no years whatsoever. But education is crucial, and is the only thing that is going to set us apart. And still, there are so many things that the Hispanics have done that most of the people do not know. And at this moment, remember, we are almost 19% of the United States population. We have 2 surgeon generals, 1 Supreme Court justice, 7 treasurers of the United States, 26 Nobel Prize winners, 6 of them for peace. We have 51 congressional medals of honor from our military people. And more than anything, we have had, for those ones who really want beauty, 22 Miss Universe. So like they say in my hometown, you're no chopped liver. And for that reason, feel good about what we are. Remember who we are. And remember, as I said, when you speak 2 languages, you have an accent, but you do not think with an accent, as is proven by the largest group of people who have really represented us, especially 51 members of Congress are Hispanics, and 7 of them are senators. So it's extremely important to know who you are, where you came from, so that when anyone comes and tries to diminish you, you're able to tell them that in the year 2060, we're going to be 38% of the population of the United States. And for that reason, I think it's important for you to start feeling the pride of being Hispanics, because for Hispanics, honor is more important than life, especially for our elderly. So be proud of who you are.
Muchas gracias, Senora. You know, the other part of it too that it's important to highlight is that research shows that 1/3 of Latino students are not expected to achieve their educational goals, with 14% of them typically dropping out, specifically the Hispanic girls, that they seem to have a higher rate when it comes to mental health issues as opposed to their white female and Hispanic males counterparts. And they also have the highest teen pregnancy rate of any of the racial groups. Which unfortunately they're also up against having to face a double minority threat. So as a Latina, incredible woman that you are, what advice would you give to our little ones that are out there having these challenges?
I go back to education. I go back to culture. And I go back to talking about the problems in the family. When you realize that you have so many problems in the Hispanic community, and the girls will believe bringing one more is something that maybe my parents will not be able to understand. I think we're going to need somewhere in the school system to be able to say it as it is for the questions that they have that may not be able to ask them at home, especially for the sensitivity of some of the topics. But more than anything, today we have a mental health crisis. And when we're looking into the emergency room today, 50% of the visits have to do with suicidal ideations. And could that be depression? Could that be feeling bullied? Could that feel that no one cares? Could that feel that we as Hispanics have not really been known for all the things that we are? Patriotism, faith, ethics, and love to family. More than 70% of our families lives with mother and father, which is not the same for the rest of the families of minorities for the United States. Tell them the goodness of who we are. Repeat them and repeat them until they come into their psyches and they realize that there's no reason to apologize for being Hispanic, but you must teach them. You must secure that knowledge, and then you have to share it. Don't let anyone put you down for who you are. And I know that there's a lot of depression, especially in the female Hispanic. And perhaps that comes out of feeling that no one understands you. unable to talk about these problems with the family, and unable to believe that you can be able to say it at the dinner table because there's enough problems already in the family for you to bring one. And then the ability to feel that we are also the largest dropout rate in education of the populations in the United States. And is there anyone to catch us before we fall? Is there anyone to be able to bring us back and give us a special education? All of that needs to be done. And more than anything, I think we need more board members in education that happen to be Hispanics, identifying themselves with the community so that we don't have to just solve the problem, but prevent them from happening. I still don't see all that working at the same time, to be able to give our girls the opportunity of STEM, where you know that the education in science and mathematics, medicine is going to be the way to go in the future. And if you really drop out of school, if you really are more in the emergency room than in your classroom, we really are not going to achieve the goals of becoming the most educated of the minorities. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but I do believe that we have to do much more to build them up to the top, rather than for always asking about all the complications and all the failures. You hear them one time, you think that you're one of those and you're not willing to come up. I would say role models are needed for our daughters. Role models are needed for our girls in school, and making sure that it's just not one encounter, but someone that they can trust. As I always said, always be thankful for your family, but always be thankful for your best friend. God knows that you're going to need both of them all during your life. So a best friend that believes in you is always going to be crucial, because remember, talent is given by God. So be humble. And in this moment, arrogance is given by us too. And that, be careful. Sometimes just tell us the reality and then follow up the movements of us getting a little bit better. Don't see me once, see me multiples.
Very inspiring words, Miss. The question here is, what are value resources I can take to high school classrooms in regards to Hispanic heritage?
Well, first and foremost, I hope that it's being celebrated, and that we're much more than a Mexican sleeping under a palm tree, that I want to find a Mexican sleeping anytime because they work so hard. Remember, we are almost 19% of the population of the United States. We are 66% Mexicans, 14% Central South American, 11% Puerto Ricans, and 5% Cubans. We are a multiplicity of races and multiplicity of colors. That's why we're called an ethnic group. And in spite of that, many in the 2000 census decided to call themselves whites and not necessarily ethnic, because we're thinking we're going up. Remember too, even though we are Hispanics, 1.3 trillion of the money in the United States come from the Hispanics, and we have the largest number of small businesses. Do people hear that? Absolutely no. Remember too that at least we speak Spanish at home, at least 22% of our people, and what we hear in the television and in the radio is how we incorporate it to change our behavior, and specifically our health. Remember too that we are the people that basically came to this country, and there are so many of us who people do not know that they're ours, and they mix in the way. Anthony Quinn, Raquel Welch, all of those are ours, and people do not know it. And so for that, know that there are people in the television that are Hispanics in heritage, but people do not know it. Remember as well, as I said, 26 Nobel Prize winners, 5 of them for peace. 51 members of Congress are Hispanics, 7 of them are senators. We have our own Supreme Court, 2 surgeon generals, 7 secretaries of the treasurer, and we have on top of that, for all of those that do not want to think of the psyches and think of the beauty, 22 Miss Universe, of which 5 are Puerto Rican. So that makes us feel good, and more than anything, we work very hard to achieve, as it's shown by the way by which our acquired process of buying in the United States will be 12%. And we are still not the most billionaires or millionaires in the world, but 7% of all the millionaires of the United States are Hispanics. So keep that in your mind. Please try to find for them that Mexican that they think is under a palm tree. They work very, very hard. And for that reason, this was seen during the crisis of COVID, in where basically we were the largest people with infections and the more ones that went into the hospitals and never came back. We needed the information always in our language, and it's extremely important. Don't feel bad for being Hispanic. We are the largest minority in the United States, and we are going to be the largest one in the year 2060. Just build for it and grow. Paciencia. We're going to get there. But more than anything, remember, honor for us is more important than life. So don't forget that your parents brought you here to give you a better future. So honor them.
Tienes la razón. We do have to honor them. We did go over this question already. There was another one with regard to leadership as it relates to representation. As you mentioned, our population is growing. We do have the majority of our students sitting in our classrooms that are of Hispanic Latino descent. So share with us your thoughts with regard to representation and how important that is for those students to see themselves in the classrooms, not only in the classrooms, but also at the administrative level and beyond.
Well, I think that when one talks that we're still represented at the U.S. Congress and we're represented in many places, we might not be represented as we deserve to be by population in the Fortune 500 memberships, but we are being incorporated slowly into them. You have to put your voice out there of your needs, and then you have to find the people that will make it possible. So many times, for example, I rotated 18 months in the U.S. Congress. And when I did that, I realized one thing: government knows me, and I need to know what government can do for me. So when I worked 18 months there, it was really interesting that I realized that you have to leave your ego at the door and learn what the government needs for you to be noticed. In the senatorial office that I work, I realized that they want everything half a page. What is the problem? How much it's going to cost, how many people is going to be impacted, and how many times I'm going to be in the media. If you think that in your head, you can pass any idea in the office that you work, but leave your ego out. If you need to bring a cup of coffee, you go ahead and do it. I remember when I was the executive secretary of one of the institutions of the National Institutes of Health, I was sitting there with one of the deans of medicine, and I asked the chairman, "Doctor, can I bring you a cup of tea?" And she looked at me. Again, our culture. She says, "You'll never get anywhere if you are so submersive to a man." He said to her, "Madam Dean, may I remind you that that cup of tea is going to end up costing me a lot." If you don't know the culture, then don't judge me by being subservient. That was my culture, not being demeaned by bringing a cup of coffee or a cup of tea to the chair. We're going to be there for the next 4 hours. So defend your values and defend your culture. Don't let anyone put you down just because you're trying to be who you are. But more than anything, be who you are, because many people assume that they know you better than what you are. Remember, don't ever be a second-degree copy of what you are. You were born an original, so don't you dare die a copy. You don't have to be somebody else. Be yourself, build yourself, and more than anything, feel proud of where you came from and who have you become.
Hi, Senora. Just absolutely amazing. Beautiful words, beautiful advice, lots of takeaways. I mean, just from making sure that we understand that we need to embrace who we are, from ensuring that we are confident in speaking our native language, from making sure that we are proud where we are. The best one, I think, was the best revenge is success. So definitely lots of takeaways. Muchas gracias, señora, por estar aquí con nosotros. We were so grateful and honored to have you from Puerto Rico. I know that you live here in Florida in our backyard, so it's great that you are here near us, and hopefully one day you'll be able to come and meet us and share more of your stories in person.
I will be more than glad to meet all of you in person, because I think sometimes you think we are far away. A picture. I just want to be present and give you all the advice that I have learned throughout my years of living. And I hope that will help at least one. If it helps one, we have been successful, because then it will multiply and we will be able to do it. Paciencia. We'll get there. Education is going to be the key.
Exactamente. Muchas gracias, señora. And audience out there, I know that you really want to continue. I'm not sure if it's frozen, if we're still live, but I'm going to keep on talking. I think we're still live and we're still on. I wasn't sure if it froze. But audience, please continue to share your thoughts in through the thought exchange. It will still be live and running, so please continue to do that. We definitely want to hear from our superintendent, Burke. He's got a wonderful message, video message, and so we're going to go ahead and share that with you all.
Hello, I'm Superintendent Mike Burke. On behalf of the school board and the entire district, I'd like to welcome you to the 10th Annual Hispanic Latino Studies Virtual Summer Institute. The theme this year is Celebrando. We are ready to celebrate the Hispanic Latino culture. Our district mission is to educate, affirm, and inspire all students, and with this event, we are doing that. and more. This institute creates awareness, promotes academic excellence, and provides opportunities for professional growth. It also ensures our commitment to the academic enrichment of our students and highlights the diversity of our community. We are excited to learn about history, culture, ethnicity, and more through the Latino voice. Our diversity helps us to expand our vision and to understand who we are as a community. The Hispanic Latino community is an important and growing segment of our district. We are committed to showcasing their contributions, their leadership, and their representation across Palm Beach County. Our theme for this school year is Your Time to Shine, and today we are ready to do that. Tu momento de brillar.
Thank you, Superintendent Mr. Burke. And now we have our amazing school board member, Mrs. Alexandria Ayala, with some few remarks.
Buenos dias a todos. Good morning. It is wonderful to be here with all of you today, celebrating the 10th annual Hispanic Latino Studies Institute. I am very excited to bring you just some words of welcome to those of us who have joined us in the past. Bienvenidos de regreso. To those of you who are new with us this year, welcome, and we hope to see you as we continue. My name is Alexandria Ayala, and I have the honor and privilege of being the first Latina elected to the Palm Beach County School Board. I am just still in adoration from Doctora Navarro's words. It is such an honor to get Novello's words. It is such an honor to see her and hear her and see her life experience and how it shaped her path. She has made such history for so many people, and her journey means so much. She's from Fajardo. I'm from San Germán, Puerto Rico. I hope my Boricuas are in here. And to be Latino and to be Hispanic is such a joy. And I think Celebrando is the perfect theme for what we represent as a community. We have to celebrate everything about who we are, what we bring to different spaces, what our perspective brings, and celebrate and uplift and honor ourselves and those around us. So her advice really stuck with me. I hope it stuck with all of you. And I'm really excited to see the rest of the program. And look forward to hearing from the rest of the participants. So have a great institute today. Congratulations to our department and to Patricia Trejo for making this happen every year. It is exciting that we have this opportunity to gather and celebrate our own community and the growing, thriving community of students that we serve in Palm Beach County that are Hispanic Latino, which is the largest sector of our students. And so again, welcome. I look forward to celebrating with all of you. Vamos a celebrar juntos. And I hope you have a great day.
Gracias. We are so happy that you were here with us as always and supporting the incredible work that our office does for the benefit of our students. So muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros también, señora. And so now we are going to segue into this amazing, amazing individual that has made an incredible impact in our educational system. Dr. Hector Montenegro is the president, the CEO of Montenegro Consulting Group. He is currently the senior district advisor for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL, as we all know it. He works with districts and administrators nationally and internationally on systemic implementation of SEL. Dr. Montenegro is an internationally recognized keynote and motivational speaker, appearing at conferences, conventions, universities, schools, and special events in the United States and abroad, get this, and abroad in over 23 countries. He has been invited through the United States Department in cooperation with the United States embassies as a special educational advisor to Chile, Peru, and Saudi Arabia. An expert on instructional design, Dr. Montenegro specialized in multicultural education, social-emotional learning, restorative practices, curriculum design, interactive and engaging pedagogy, technology integration, effective instructional strategies for English language learners, leadership coaching and development, and parent engagement. That's not all. Just hold on and listen to this. He also serves on several national boards, including the New York City Leadership Academy, Transformative Educational Leadership, and the Parent Teacher Home Visits. He has received numerous awards, including the National Technology Savvy Superintendent's Award, Texas Technology Superintendent of the Year Award, and statewide Texas Association for Bilingual Education Honoree Award for Public Education, and the National LULAC Educator of the Year Award. Dr. Montenegro, if you did not know, he was a math teacher, a principal, a chief of staff for the DC Public Schools, deputy superintendent, superintendent of schools for 3 different school districts in Texas, and he obtained his master's from Stanford University and doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin. He is just absolutely incredible and even volunteers for the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation annually on projects in Hawaii, Brazil, El Salvador, Peru, and Uganda. And lastly, he is one of the founding members of the National Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. And it is an honor to truly have him with us today. Bienvenido, Dr. Montenegro.
Are we on?
Yes, you are on and we are live and we are excited to hear from you.
Miss Trejo, we're having a little bit of technical issues with him right now. So we can work through that. Miss Haas is actually back if you want to maybe introduce her, and then we can work with Kim and then try to get Dr. Montenegro's stuff online. Is that okay?
How exciting is it when you go virtually live? But we wanted to do this to give our audience and our participants an opportunity to engage live, because we do have other opportunities today throughout the day and at your own leisure. If you dive into the Palm Beach School District's website, you will see that there are opportunities even virtually posted on a webpage. Thank you to the Communications Department, to the Education Network as well, because they've been working very hard behind the scenes to ensure that we offer many options to our participants, specifically those that work for our school district and are looking to work very hard to grow professionally. So we do have other options there as well. And so we are going to go ahead and we're going to move forward with Mrs. Kim Haas, who is an executive producer, a host, and a creator of Afro-Latino Travels with Kim Haas, a travel show celebrating the African influence in Latin America. She has traveled extensively throughout Latin America. Kim has been active in Afro-Latino issues for more than a decade and is a founder of LosAfricanosLatinos.com, a blog celebrating Afro-Latino culture. Kim has extensive experience in media and communications. She served as director of marketing for WSSI TV Telemundo in Philadelphia. She also served as an on-camera pledge host, English, Spanish, and Italian for WYB TV in Philadelphia. Kim has appeared in numerous videos and commercials for companies such as Kohl's, Time Warner Cable, Walgreens, and she's fluent in Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. Her undergraduate and graduate degrees are in Spanish, and Kim is the owner of Haas Media, LLC, a multilingual community outreach, translation services, and communications firm located in the greater New York City area. Welcome, Mrs. Haas.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Thank you so much. So, you know what? When I've been talking to educators for the last 2 years since we've been in this pandemic and kind of post-pandemic, and I'm asking people, how do you feel? And so often people tell me that they are just exhausted and they feel overwhelmed and they're tired and they've given so much over the last almost really 2.5 years, and they just need a break. And I wonder how many of you kind of feel like that right now, that you just need to replenish, recharge. And I think summer offers us a great opportunity to do just that. And so I want to talk about, as we move into summer and replenishing ourselves and rejuvenating ourselves, one way that we can do that. And the reason why I'm here this morning is to talk about, I think, an area that is worthy of your consideration for rejuvenation, how it can inspire us as we come back to school in our communities in August, September, whenever you come back. I think learning more about Afro-Latino culture can do just that for your students, for the communities, for all of us. So that's what I want to talk about this morning. So we're going to start off with kind of, how did I get on this journey of loving Afro-Latino culture? So it started out with this woman who's on your screen right here. And this is Cassie Keith, and she is my grandmother. And she passed on But I tell this story because I think she had an incredible wanderlust and she loved to travel. And even though she grew up in the segregated South in South Carolina, she had this incredible spirit and love of people. And her life was really challenging. And she lived in the Jim Crow segregated South. So she didn't have all the opportunities that I think we all enjoy today. But she had this larger than life personality. She loved people. If she had a chance right now to be with all of you, she'd hug you. She called people puddin'. And she was just that kind of wonderful spirit. And so she took me to Acapulco when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I can remember that someone in the hotel lobby taught me my numbers in Spanish, 1 to 20, uno a 20. And from that moment on, I was completely hooked. If it's possible to change your DNA, my entire DNA changed on that day because I wanted more Spanish, more language, more culture, more travel. My whole world had opened up to me and I was thrilled at the age of 6 or 7. And so I owe that to my grandmother and her spirit and energy. And I want us to think about that this morning, that spirit and energy that we give to our students in our communities as educators. And so I traveled and I studied in Spain junior year in college. I majored in Spanish, undergraduate and graduate school. And I started traveling throughout Latin America and just loved it. And as I'm traveling, I'm starting to meet, I go to Venezuela and Brazil and Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and all these wonderful places. And I'm starting to meet a lot of people who look like me. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, because when I watch Spanish language television, I don't see anyone who looks like me. But when I'm traveling, I see a whole new world that opened up for me. And I was super excited. And so I put on the screen here this, I think, fabulous picture of these wonderful women who for me represent the spirit of Afro-Latino culture and the beauty. And I love their skin tone and the contrast with their yellow turban head wraps. And I think they're gorgeous. And I want us to ponder and think about them and the next couple of people that I show you in the presentation. So Brazil is a perfect example of Afro-Latino culture. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But I want us to think about the talent, creativity, the resilience and genius of Afro-Latinos, because so often we don't see them. It's like they're invisible. We don't see them in media, in television, in textbooks. And that's what I want to think about and the impact that we can have in terms of changing that and being more inclusive in our education, in our curriculum. So how did Blacks get to, and how did people of African descent get to Latin America? Well, we start out with the Middle Passage. And as you can see in Africa, there were 12 million people who survived what is called the Middle Passage. So they went from Africa, they were forcibly taken, and many of you may already know this, but they were forcibly taken from Africa through the Atlantic, on the Atlantic Ocean, to what is now what we call the Americas, and what is now the United States, North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. 12 million human beings from Africa were survived that Middle Passage, survived it. So researchers are still trying to figure out and estimate how many people of African descent did not survive the Middle Passage. But for those that did, and we owe a debt of gratitude, I believe, to all, but for those who did, they made up with so much of what we enjoy in Latin America today. And their influence is so strong, and it's so unique, and it's so incredibly glorious. So let's take a look at that a little bit more. So Latin America's population, and I love this my little pie chart, and I love it because I wanted something bright, right? And the sun. And Latin America's population, we're talking about 625 million people, right, who make up Latin America. And of that 625 million, 1 in every 3 are of African descent, are Afro-Latinos. So 1 in every 3 Latin Americans have African ancestry, look like me, and then you have brown and Black people and all shades in between. And so when we think about this African influence in Latin America, we often think about, and I love the arts and dance and music and cuisine, But we also have to remember basic infrastructure, how the countries moved products and services and people. And so one of those keys is people of African descent built so much of Latin America. And here on this slide on your screen, this is Costa Rica. And these are people mainly of African descent from Jamaica and other Caribbean islands who emigrated with that, again, that American dream, that idea of that immigrant dream of building a better life for themselves and for their families. And so many of them left Jamaica and went to Costa Rica to build the Costa Rican Railroad. And if you think about what that means, over 100 years ago, to build a railroad without the technology that we have today, without the healthcare services, if somebody got injured in the rainforest, you couldn't just call 911 on your phone. And so these people gave their lives building the Costa Rican Railroad and the Panama Canal as just two examples of how Afro-Latinos and people of African descent helped build the basic infrastructure of Latin America. So we talk about infrastructure, but let's also talk about music and dance and all those other things that make up, I think, and help enrich our lives. Havana. I don't know if there are people out there from Havana, from Cuba. If you are, hola, buenos dias. So I've been to Havana several times, and this is a couple that I call the dynamic duo. I love Alejandro and Dania, and they have such spirit, such energy and passion and soul. They're fabulous musicians. And I wanted to show this because if you go to Havana, so many of the people in Havana are brown and Black people, and they look like Alejandro and Dania. And so when we think about educating our students, talking with them, sharing curriculum, ideas, we can be more inclusive, and we can look for people like Dania and Alejandro and learn and rejuvenate our materials and re-energize how we teach Hispanic and Latino studies. And here's a picture from Puerto Rico, Bomba. If there are any folks from Puerto Rico, Boricua. This is a picture I love because I'm with Jesus Cepeda. And if you all are familiar with Bomba, if not, I call it the soul of an island. It's a musical and dance form that was created by Afro-Puerto Ricans, enslaved, and some were freed. And as you know, dance is a form of communication, of storytelling, of sharing the news of the day, of morals and issues. And Jesus's father, Rafael, was what I like to say, he was a social media influencer before there was social media. So before there was Instagram and Facebook and all the other platforms, Jesus's father, Rafael, would walk the streets of San Juan and of Puerto Rico, sharing the virtues and goodness of Bomba and trying to get people to appreciate it and learn about it and enjoy it. And so I say hats off to Rafael Cepeda, who's passed on, but Bomba lives and I think is stronger than ever because of people like him. This is a photo of me in Rio in Brazil, and this is with Antonio. And I love sharing this picture of Antonio because for me, he represents, again, the glory and goodness of Afro-Latinos who, again, so often feel like they are invisible, and I want us to recognize them. And so he's a bellman. He works at the Marriott in Copacabana Beach. Are there any Brazilians out there? Bom dia. And he is such a kind and loving, you can see that great smile. He always greeted me so warmly and all the guests at the hotel. And I just love talking with him. And he told me how hard it is for him sometimes as a Black man, as an Afro-Brazilian in Rio. And he said he often will walk across the street and women, he said, will grab their bags and they'll look at him or they'll cross the other way. And he said it's really challenging. And I want us to think about Antonio and the human being that he is. And he deserves, like all of us, a chance to be recognized and honored and celebrated for the talents that he has been given and a chance to really realize his dreams, whatever they may be. So I like us to think differently because remember, and I just want to share this, in Brazil, 55% of the population is of African ancestry. So when we see Brazilians like the women that I showed you from the group earlier, or Antonio, they represent the majority of Brazilians. Brazilians come in obviously all shades and backgrounds, but most Brazilians are African ancestry. And so when we think about Brazil, I want us to think bigger and larger and expand our perceptions of what it means to be Brazilians. Because actually, Afro-Brazilians created samba. So they are the creators of samba. So we need to just continue to think about how we can enrich our subject matter, our materials, and be more inclusive. The Afro-Mexicans, good morning if anyone's here from Mexico or of Mexican descent. And Afro-Mexicans are sometimes referred to as La Tercera Raíz, the third root, because they represent, for Mexico, the European influence, the indigenous influence, and the African influence. And just about 3 or some years ago, prior to the pandemic, Afro-Mexicans were first realized in the Mexican census for the first time in 500 years. So they've had a presence in Mexico. They came to Mexico as enslaved, as freemen, and they've been in the country for 500 years, but they've been pretty much invisible. And so now they've been working for many years, and finally they are recognized in the census. And we're looking at least 1 million people who self-identified as of African descent in Mexico. So our hats off to them. And coming up on this slide is Francia Marquez. Anybody from Colombia, good morning. Colombia just had elections on Sunday. And I have to tell you, I took this picture. I cannot believe it. 10 years ago, I met Francia, and she inspired me with her passion, her strength. And she was so incredibly brave. She worked in the mines in Colombia. She's from a town called around La Toma. And there are land rights issues for Afro-Colombians. And she received so many death threats. She's there in the photo. Francia has the hat on, and Clemencia, who's a colleague of her, and they were working to really help Afro-Colombians with land rights issues and human rights issues. And the both of them just exuded tremendous bravery and courage. And so now I just am overwhelmed with amazement and joy that Francia is poised to be the next vice president of Colombia. And so when I say that, I want us to again think about the incredible talent that is in these communities and the opportunity, and that we all benefit when all people have a chance to be who they are and express their talents fully. And the next slide, speaking of expressing their talents fully, is this little boy whom I just love. I don't even know him, but he's from Guatemala. So if there are any Guatemaltecos out there, buenos dias. I love this little boy. As I said, I don't know him, but I feel like I know him. I love his smile. He brings me joy. I think he brings hope and optimism. And I want us to recognize him and think about, when we think about Guatemala, that there are indigenous people, that there are people of African descent in Guatemala, and to be more inclusive when we think about our curriculums and how we teach Hispanic and Latino studies. And that this little boy, I hope, has all the chances to be all he can be. And again, we all benefit when that's possible, and every human being is given a chance to be all that they can and exercise their rights and freedoms. So thank you so much for that. Muchísimas gracias. I would like to share with you just a little bit, one segment from my travel show, Afro-Latino Travels with Kim Haas. So we're going to cue that up, please, if you would, John. And if you want to dance, if you're feeling in the mood for un poquito de baile o quieres bailar, by all means, please do. This was shot in Limón, Costa Rica, and the shows have been airing across the country on PBS. So you can check your local listings and see our first 2 episodes in Costa Rica of Afro-Latino Travels. And so, John, whenever you're ready, we're going to share this segment. So if anybody's a Tico out there, anybody from Costa Rica, buenos dias. And as soon as this segment is up, we will share it. And I'd love to hear your feedback, questions, any thoughts you have about it. But for me, this has been a lifelong passion and love of sharing and learning for me about Afro-Latino culture. I feel like I'm just starting because there's so much glory and Yashira Wilson knew how to dance before she could walk. As she stood on her father's toes, he taught her how to dance calypso, salsa, and merengue. Now she teaches dance at Kun Limon, a center for the arts. She's invited me to join the class today. Cross your fingers, I don't step on any toes.
Ok, muchachos, vamos a iniciar. Hoy vamos a trabajar una danza africana exclusiva y llamada Bembe, que es una danza que viene de raíces nigerianas y esto fue traído a Costa Rica en forma de la esclavitud en 3 diferentes tipos de culturas o tribus, la Ashanti, la Yoruba y los Congos. Hoy contamos con una invitada internacional, ¿verdad? Así que vamos a ver cómo nos va. Esta es la base y todo lo vamos a hacer en 6 tiempos de 2 vueltas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Última. Esa es la base del bembe, que la vamos a trabajarla. Now we're going to dance. Vamos. That is bembe. Permítame. Ese es el varón, él se acerca. 1, y 2, y 3. Ok, vámonos.
After an exhilarating African dance class, Yetshira and I meet up for a chat. Yetshira, muchísimas gracias. The class was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. I loved every minute of it. You have such energy and presence and pride. You feel it all.
Claro, eso es lo que tenemos que mostrarle a los estudiantes. Eso es lo que tenemos que aprender a transmitir. El baile o la danza son sentimientos, se expresan pasiones, se expresa lo que es la persona.
Tell me about your teaching, the dance,
Okay.
how long you've been in the field.
Empecé a los 10 años. En Limón la cultura es explosiva, lo aprende desde que nace. Aquí se canta cuando se está triste, se baila cuando se está contento, se baila en todo momento. El niño desde que nace ya está con los movimientos. Me apasiona trabajar con los niños, que aprendan la cultura que tenemos acá, que la gente se sienta orgullosa de lo que son, que puedan caminar y decir, sí, soy una negra nacida, un negro nacido en Limón, y así es la forma como vivimos. Eso somos nosotros.
Well, where did this tremendous pride that you have, I mean, where did it come from for you?
La persona tiene que saber quién es él, tiene que entender cuáles son sus raíces, por qué aman ser lo que son, independientemente de donde vengan y la condición de ellos económica, social. Ellos tienen que aprender a ser felices.
Has that evolved? You see more of the young people with a sense of pride?
Los muchachos, por ejemplo, son muchachos de diferentes partes de la provincia de Limón. Y esos muchachos, tal vez como le dije, no pueden expresar lo que son en un papel, pero bailan, cantan con su cuerpo. Su cuerpo emite los movimientos de lo que tal vez piensen y de lo que estén expresando. Esa es la forma como ellos pueden decir, este soy yo, esta es mi identidad. Sí, soy negro, estoy orgulloso de él, estas son mis raíces. Es necesario que el joven cambie la mentalidad. Entonces estos niños están como con esa hambre de aprender. Mira, no sabía esto, ahora podemos conocerlo.
In your African dance class, you had people from a diverse background.
Yeah, diversity. Primeramente hay que mostrarle al estudiante que todos son importantes. Vivimos en un lugar, Costa Rica y principalmente Limón, tenemos mucha influencia. Tenemos gente blanca, china, chola, y en partes más alejadas todavía tenemos cultura indígena. No pensar en un tono de piel, pensar que todos somos una cultura, que tenemos diferentes rasgos, pero eso no nos quita quiénes somos, ni de dónde venimos. Entonces yo considero que ellos se sienten muy bien, ellos están felices, porque pueden demostrarse sin problema, y ahí se puede ver que verdaderamente podemos convivir, que podemos desarrollarnos independientemente una posición económica, un color de piel. Y aquí hay mucho mestizaje. Hay mucho mestizaje.
Wow. Well, cheers to you. There you go.
Gracias.
It's no surprise.
Hey, and cheers to all of you. Thank you so much. And the blog is, I'm just happy to repeat, is losafrolatinos.com. And that was a segment with Yachira. And did anybody dance? I guess that's one of my questions. But she's just exudes so much love for her students. And she sees how through dance, she's changing lives, which is just phenomenal. And I so enjoyed the dance class. So if you happen to be in the Limon neighborhood, please try and step over to Kun Limon, because they have wonderful classes, and she's just a delight and a true inspiration. So I hope that was able to give you a recharge and help you regenerate and rejuvenate for the summer. And consider, please, Afro-Latinos and including it in your Hispanic Latino studies moving forward. Muchísimas gracias.
No, gracias a ti. I was definitely dancing in my seat, I will say. And you definitely took us through a journey of the different countries. So that was really cool too. I saw some people cheering the Colombia, the Mexico, but everywhere it was pretty amazing to see that. So we've already dropped the link in the chat box. We're hoping that our participants have already engaged a little bit. We do want to go ahead and start with at least asking one of the most immediate questions I'm sure that are on people's minds with regard to the culture around Afro-Latinos. James, you want to go ahead and share some of those questions for us? All right, here we go. It says, Kim, you touched on so many unique and often underrepresented parts of the Afro-Latino culture. How can we reflect this more in our schools and show these beautiful cultures?
Well, I think I love the research. And so I think when you're thinking about teaching a particular subject matter. And again, I'm not a teacher, but I think we can dig a little bit deeper and look for, articles and look for people, whether it's scientists or, like I was saying, like the Panama Canal and the Costa Rican Railroad. If you look up those things and you're teaching Latin American history, I mean, they were built by, people of African descent. So it may take just a little bit longer, but it's so well worth it because there's incredible history behind it and behind some of those most iconic, like the canal, infrastructure, investments and in Latin America. So it just takes sometimes researching and, sometimes just asking people, if you have friends from Latin America, you can sometimes ask them, do they know, and do a lot of research. And one other, you might try the Library of Congress has a really wealth of materials dedicated just to Afro-Latinos. I'll put in a little blog for losafrolatinos.com. My blog, we interviewed a lot of people. So you can check out our blog and look for materials, and you can always reach out to me directly.
Great, gracias. Valerie, you got the next one. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, there was an airplane going and I didn't want you to hear the sound. Okay, so the next question. Most people are just grateful about you sharing our culture, which I appreciate too. I'm a Colombian woman, so I appreciate that too. So what are some of the things that have surprised you in your travels?
I just didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the first part?
So many unique experiences around the world and so well educated. So, what are some of the things that have surprised you in your travels around this part of the country?
Oh my goodness. There's so much. Each place I go to, I learn something. And so, I say it, I mentioned the Costa Rican Railroad. I had no idea. And when we were shooting the segment for the show, our crew, who's from Costa Rica, many members of the crew, they didn't know about the African influence and how Afro-Costa Ricans built the railroad. And then after the first 5,000 people, Afro-Costa Ricans, died building the railroad, they stopped counting the people who died and passed on as a result of working on the railroad. So that stunned me. And I just thought, oh my God, I owe a debt of gratitude to these people, these human beings. And so I think in each country, I try to be open and learning. And so I'm always just totally fascinated, but I guess that would be one. Learning about the Panama Canal. I mean, I could go on forever, and how people of African descent were paid in silver, I guess silver coins, and people of European descent were paid in gold coins. So there was a difference in terms of how people were paid. There was segregation in terms of where people were paid, the kinds of jobs. So on the infrastructure side, there's a lot. And then in dance and music and cuisine, I'm just always astounded.
And we are so astounded with you, Kim. You are absolutely amazing. You have touched so many of us. It was great that you highlighted a lot of the underrepresentation that has happened with regard to the Afro-Latinos. Everybody is just pleased with the very unique experiences that you have had personally and traveled throughout the world, and then have been able to highlight through your own personal lens and your own successful TV show. So we hope that you continue to do this amazing work. You are such a beautiful person. And as we're going through, I'm looking at all the wonderful questions. Again, participants, please continue to engage in the conversation. It will be live. The link will always be live. So please make sure that you continue to take advantage of that and share your thoughts and your comments and your reflections. Thank you again, Kim, for being here with us. We appreciate you.
Gracias. Adios.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Two amazing Hispanic Latinas that have made incredible contributions to our educational system and to the world. And now we're going to go ahead and welcome now Dr. Hector Montenegro. I already went through his amazing accolades. Dr. Montenegro, I see that you're here with us now. I'm glad you could be here. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm doing well. Un abrazo para todos. I hope you're feeling well. You're doing well. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. And thank you, Patricia, for the invitation to participate in this Celebrando of the Latino history and Latino community contributions and educational achievements of the Hispanic community. And I just have to say, I'm actually here in Phoenix with a conference, a national conference called Soluciones. And what we're doing is we're actually focusing on closing, and if not eliminating, the achievement gap for Latino students, which is not an exclusion of all other students. It's a very inclusive and a very profound conference that hopefully you all will take a look at it at solutiontree.com. But I'd like to go on with my presentation, a little bit of my personal life. I want to share with you my parents. They're from Mexico. My father's from Durango. My mother's from Guanajuato. They came to the United States when they were young and just really lived a beautiful life. Here we were at a Chinese restaurant, and my dad opened up his fortune cookie. And in this picture, he's 98 years old. And the fortune cookie said, "Any day above ground is a good day." So I have kept that as my heartfelt morning mantra, that I have another opportunity to make a contribution to the rest of the world. The next picture is a picture of my father playing golf at the age of 99. Absolutely amazing. And I have taken up also the sport of golf and learned much about the whole metaphor of life. You know, things may go wrong, may have difficulty, but you have to be resilient because there's always going to be another hole. And it is a skill set. It's an evolutionary skill set and a process that really, when I think about the systemic change in education, there are so many parallels to sports, to the fine arts and so forth that make a big difference. So next picture, I want to share with you that my father, he and his 5 5 brothers altogether. My father and his 4 brothers served in the military. They fought for this country during World War II. So they were very much dedicated and committed to serving the nation and also to create an opportunity for their children to be successful. So this is my father here. If you click on it, they'll show an arrow. That is, there he is. And he served in the Merchant Marines and got a letter of commendation from President Truman. So we were very proud of him. He lived to be 101. Next picture, another and one. But after the war, he came back to this. And this is one of the things that we cannot ignore, but actually as a point of departure, that we want to make sure that every child has that opportunity to be accepted, to be valued, their culture, their language, their heritage, and not be segregated simply because characteristics such as language. A lot of times I see in EL programs that kids are put apart from the rest of the students, and the rest of the students don't have an opportunity to learn and value diversity. Next. So this is the picture of the family. So my mother and father had 5 boys, just like my father had 4 brothers, and we turned out to be pretty darn good. Next. And so this is the culture I grew into, was born into, learned about the rich value of my heritage, what my parents brought from Mexico and to our family. And you can see in the middle of the picture is a community circle. And I think that when we look at the Latino community, we need to continue to emphasize the critical need for us to pull together. Even though we come from diverse backgrounds and diverse socioeconomic experiences, our community is a collaborative one, and we need to continue to emphasize that. Next. And my father was a farm worker, so it was really important that we understood the struggles and the fight for equity, equality, and opportunity that Cesar Chavez brought to the struggle. Next. And here's a picture of Bobby Kennedy when he was running for president, meeting with Cesar Chavez. And I remember when I was growing up there in LA that Bobby Kennedy came down Whittier Boulevard, and I stuck out my hand in 1968, and he touched my hand. And that was the evening in which he was assassinated at the hotel. Next. And so Si se puede has been my mantra. And I really believe that this is something that has been ingrained in my thinking. In spite of the challenges, we need to be resilient. We need to believe that it can be done. We need to believe that there's so many wonderful things that the rest of the world has to offer. So I'm going to ask John, just go ahead and change slides every few 10 seconds. This is me on the right-hand side in college. Things got a little bit out of hand. And so my hair's kind of growing back a little bit. Continue changing, John. And there I am. And I really have gone through a lot in terms of my experience, in terms of learning about myself. There I am there and growing up in LA, and continue, John. And there I am there in East LA, hanging out with the homies. And there's my car. I just love that beautiful car. And I was destined to be a mechanic. And look at the beautiful artwork of our culture, of our language, of our community. And this is something that I want to just continue to emphasize in this presentation, that growing up in the Southwest was very unique and very special, very rich in culture, very rich in language. Also, there continues to be things like Dia de los Muertos, that we want to continue to emphasize and bring into our educational experiencing, valuing the culture of our community, valuing the culture of our children is so critical and so important. So one of the things that this has afforded me, even though my counselor told me that I was not going to be successful in college, I went to college, and there I discovered how to dance ballet folklorico. And there I am on the right-hand side back in the 70s. It was just a tremendous experience, a kind of a discovery of who I was, because that was not included in my educational experience. So I ended up being a teacher in San Jose back in 1975. Also went on to Stanford University and Washington, D.C. and Georgetown. And there I am as a principal of a middle school, and the keynote speaker at the time was Jesse Jackson. So I was just thrilled that he became the keynote speaker at our assembly. And later on, I became a superintendent of schools in Texas. I live in Austin, Texas, and there I am in El Paso. And one of the values of that experience is that when I went to a preschool program, all the children were graduating from preschool with a cap and gown with the name of a college or a university that they're going to be attending. And it's beginning with the end in mind, focusing on what we believe that children can become, will become, and the power of one to make a difference. Continue, John, just moving through the slides. Yeah. So I've had the opportunity to travel the world. Here I am in Saudi Arabia, speaking to all of the educational leaders throughout the country. I did keynotes. I did 3 different speaking tours of Saudi Arabia, focusing on educational innovation. But one of the things that I've learned in that experience is that children everywhere want to belong. Children everywhere want to participate, and I'm meeting with the Ministry of Education and with its deputies and talking about the implementation and transformation of their educational system. And so there we are, sitting on the floor, having a good time. But I did not interact with any of the ladies until I went to Bahrain, a small island across from Saudi Arabia, and there I'm working with them, educators. Traveled the world, been to China, of course, there on the Great Wall. Learning from the educational system there as well, children wanting to belong, traveling to India, there's a Taj Mahal. I've had a wonderful opportunity to learn from that culture, meeting with parents from India, and their hopes and dreams for their children are no different from parents anywhere else. Also traveling in Egypt, interacting with students, and look at the enthusiasm. You know, when you interact with children in general, they just want to be successful, they want to belong. I've joined the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation and planting fruit trees in Brazil, also planting fruit trees in Uganda. And here is a middle school children excited, and high school children also working on a fruit tree planting project, in which really had a wonderful time, wonderful interaction with children around the world. And these are children in a Muslim school and also in Uganda. And I realized that no matter where I went, here I am in Machu Picchu, traveling to Peru just recently, working with the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation and contributing to the world. And these are children in El Salvador. They didn't have running water, so they ran down to the river and just picked up water in these buckets, and just this beautiful sunset and the cariño and the desire to be successful, to belong and to participate in life's gifts is just universal. And when children come into our educational system, I know that one of the things that has happened and that I've seen throughout my career, the power of one, the power that we can make in the life and future of a child. And for example, one of the things that really stands out in my mind is when a child that comes to this country does not speak English, continue, John, please, does not speak English, you can see valedictorians like Larissa Martinez. Larissa came to this country as a 7th grader from Mexico, not able to speak a word of English, and a teacher took interest in her. She went through high school, teachers supported her, and when she graduated from high school, in her valedictorian speech, she made it known for the very first time that she was undocumented. She was scared to death. She got a standing ovation. Next. And here is working with a school and outside of Chicago, and I was walking down the hall and doing the 2020 graduation. This was Matt Diaz, also a valedictorian, and they quoted him on this mural, on this photo on the wall. We thrive when we are around each other. So that sense of community, we take that away from our children when we're so driven by the focus on individualism, competition, and even social segregation. Congratulations to Juliana Utturbe, who is the National Teacher of the Year this last year, and she focuses on joy and celebrating the language and culture. She is an immigrant from Colombia, and she is the National Teacher of the Year, and you can see the president giving her her trophy. But most importantly, I currently work and consult with Latinos in Action. It was founded by Jose Enriquez out of Utah, started with just an idea that he had as a teacher 20 years ago, very similar to AVID, in which as a teacher, he saw how the Latinos were being excluded and they were not being valued in terms of their language and culture. And he started Latinos in Action. It is now become a national program. They have programs in 8 states and it continues to grow. They're focusing on leadership. They focus on community service. They focus on culturally relevant college preparation classes. And there are dedicated teachers within the program that really commit themselves to work with the students as a regular class. So they do receive credit for this class. Continue with the slides, please. And here is the sample of the national conference that they have every year. That now it used to be just a handful of students would come in, and now hundreds, if not thousands, come into the national conference, and they have several conferences. Just recently, I worked with Jose and the student boot camp, 3 days of 350 students from 15 different schools. And you can see that they have really come together. They've been empowered. Their presentations were relative to their culture, their language, and really I commend the vision, the power of one that Jose has in order to transform the culture of education and empower children, predominantly English learners, that really were struggling and really didn't have a place, but to the program Latinos in Action in schools throughout, even Florida, you can see that they have really thrived. This is a professional development. I do a lot of the professional development for the teachers to bring in, I know in some places this is not really well received, but social and emotional learning. It is all about relationships. It is all about valuing diversity. It is all about setting and achieving goals. It is all about making responsible decisions in the best interest of all children. And so this reminds me of the saying, being successful doesn't necessarily make you great. What makes you great is when you reach back and help somebody else become great. So as the power of one really makes a significant impact in what we're doing, we want to keep that in mind, that we want to continue with the slides, please. And we want to continue focusing on reaching back to the communities that most need our help and our representation. So I want to really thank you for that wonderful opportunity to share just a few thoughts, a slice of life in terms of my experience, and also to know that, you know, based on my motivation to continue to serve the community is the Si Se Puede. In spite of the fact of the obstacles, even with the pandemic, worked with schools throughout the country. Recently, I was in a school in Chicago area working with 6th graders. I had spent 2 days with 6th graders. I have never seen so many children that have anxiety, that have frustration and fear, that really lack social skills because they were out of school for 2 years, and social segregation and separation is not good for children. We know that now firsthand. So they didn't get a chance to experiment with relationships, experiment with working with adults and so forth, and seeing adult role models. And so I really encourage us to continue to work collaboratively as a community in the best interest of all children. So, Si Se Puede, I appreciate you. And Patricia, you're a terrific leader, and I value your contribution to the Latino community and the community overall.
Ay, gracias, Dr. Montenegro. Siempre es un placer de tenerte, and you left out a lot of what you really have done aside from all of that, as far as being one of the original founding members for the National Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, which has about over 8,000 members nationwide, where we have, and I say we because I'm part of the familia, where we have grown so many amazing leaders, and it's all attributed to you and your hermanos and your primos. So you forgot to talk a little bit about that. And I know people are already putting their thoughts, reflections, and questions and comments in the thought exchange link. Please continue to do that as we're going back and forth, because I want to take advantage while I have him virtually. Dr. Montenegro, talk a little bit about that.
About ALAS?
ALAS.
Yeah,
What does that even stand for? I know what it stands for, but for those watching.
Yeah, the Association for Latino Administrators and Superintendents, ALAS, como wings, you know. But ALAS began with a group of superintendents back in 2002, 2003, and said, look, we don't have national representation. So people like Stan Paz and Carlos Garcia and Ricardo Medina and Carmela Franco and Darlene Robles came together and said, we need to start a national association. And that was about 19 years ago. In about 2003, we'll celebrate our 19th year in Puerto Rico, our national conference in October. And the following year, we're going to celebrate the 20th anniversary of ALAS. And it continues to develop leadership. For example, Patricia and I met through the Superintendent's Leadership Academy, in which I was one of the co-administrators and facilitators for the Academy. We had 16 participate last year, all virtually, but at the same time, there was a lot of cariño, there was a lot of guest speakers. It was most impressive, and that's what the ALAS continues to do, is to promote prospective administrators and to also support current superintendents and administrators overall, and focusing on the critical need that the Latino children need and have for role models at the highest level. Most recently, Richard Carranza, who came in through ALAS and through the Superintendent's Leadership Academy, ended up as superintendent in San Francisco, Houston, and in the largest school district in the nation, New York City Schools. So, sí se puede.
That's exactly right. Sí se puede. And I have to make sure that we mention that Richard Carranza is going to be here in person for the Florida ALAS statewide conference. And we have to thank Florida ALAS and National ALAS because they are both amazing sponsors, along with Thought Exchange, with regard to the work that we do here in the School District of Palm Beach County around Hispanic Latino studies. And so thank you, Thought Exchange. James, we're ready for some questions here. Valerie, you want to go ahead and ask the first one?
Yeah, thank you. So as you said, many students nowadays feel many anxiety. So one of the questions is, what is one way we can try to lower students' overall anxiety?
Well, one of the things that I personally have found to be very effective and very successful is that in our culture, there's a word called cariño. And through cariño, it means that it really is a heartfelt care and love. And to be cariñoso means that you express that feeling and sentiment in very explicit and obvious ways. So greeting, welcoming, reassuring, in spite of the fact that children, I use this metaphor, come to school with an invisible backpack. And we have to get away from the false narrative that we need to command and control like we did before, and we need to get back to normal. There's not going to be a normal as it was in the past, because even adults have been impacted by the anxiety, the stress, the frustration, and even the scarcity of resources. So we are looking at creating classroom cultures. I mentioned a group I work with in West Chicago, in which I worked with the students in the middle school, 6th and 7th graders, and we did collaborative things and activities and interaction, had them write, try to integrate engaging team building activities into language and literacy. So the two go hand in hand. It's not you do an activity and you go back to business as usual. But one of the most important things is the transformation of educators, beginning at the top, beginning with principals, assistant principals, and getting into the classroom, so that we spend a few minutes doing welcoming rituals. This is part of CASELS, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. Focus on the 3 signature practices. Start off with a welcoming ritual, a virtual abrazo, figuratively, a welcoming, show enthusiasm, and then engaging activities is the second signature practice, where students practice relationships, but you have to set shared agreements so they understand the parameters in which to operate, and always an optimistic closure. What did you learn today? How did you feel? What are you looking forward to for tomorrow? So there has to be excitement in the climate and culture of the classroom in order for children to want to be engaged in academic focus, so they become more motivated. Yes, we have to address trauma. We have to address our own stress, and we have to be well, because you can't pour from an empty glass. This is a good time to fill yourself up with strength, vision, and cariño.
Absolutely. The audience definitely thought that it was a wonderful presentation. There are some strategies that are the most effective and that are being done in the classroom, but there's also some concerns. So what concerns you the most about what you see in our education system right now? What can we do to make a difference?
Well, I think as leaders, we have to take in mind that a great leader is not to be in control. A great leader is about taking care of those in your and under your supervision. And so we get stressed out on accountability. We get stressed out on covering the content. But leaders are in a critical role to learn how to be more cariñoso, more caring, supportive, to lighten the load and the burden. Like Mark Brackett in his book, Permission to Feel, asks folks, how are you feeling? And spend time just reflecting and talking a little bit about practice. What different practices do we need to bring into the classroom? And not a visit classroom for the sake of accountability and evaluation, but for the sake of mentoring and coaching. That whole mindset about command and control really needs to be revisited. We need to really work toward moving from the individualistic competitive mentality to more cooperative, collaborative, and engaging and inclusive practices. Children want to be included, but every time I work with children, I say, what is your biggest fear and what is your thing that stresses you out the most? And they say, making friends, and they just make it very clear. Adults don't help us. And when I go into classrooms, many teachers do an excellent job, but many teachers have no clue about facilitation skills and facilitating relationships. And it's not just about cooperative learning. You've got to set standards in terms of relationships to reassure each other so students can tell their story and be valued and who they are and who they represent. But one last important thing is those English dominant students, English speakers, adults need to facilitate that connection with your EL so that there is a higher level of collaboration and interaction. So I take one more.
The next question is, based on your many years of diverse experience and as an educator and leader, what are the most profound changes you have seen that we need to celebrate?
Well, I think first and foremost, to celebrate the fact that we have empowered Latino leaders who have stepped in some of the highest positions in the nation. We saw earlier the presentations earlier that the different areas and different fields. But for me, I'm in education, and we're the ones who prepare all those doctors, these children to become doctors. We are the ones who prepare all these children to be professionals, to contribute back to their society and their communities. But one of the most significant changes I've seen, I've seen many, but I really honestly believe that when I have gone into classrooms and teachers really have come to terms with the fact that, yes, academics is directly tied in to the way a child feels and the way the child is being welcomed into the classroom and valued. There's a direct link. And every time I've seen teachers really take into consideration a welcoming ritual where they even do things such as how to shake hands, how to express feelings, look at some of the vocabulary about emotional strength and also valuing the diversity within the classroom, children thrive. But I'm going to tell you, Latinos in Action, that has blown me away. Empowering children really to become leaders, to become contributing members to their community.
That's exactly right. And we are going to continue to do that and empower our leaders, our student leaders this afternoon. Dr. Montenegro, it's too bad you can't join us this afternoon. We're going to have an in-person portion at Park Vista Community High School, but I do know that you're going to be here in person in Florida, in Palm Beach, tomorrow for the Florida Ala State Conference, where a lot of our own school district personnel and superintendent and school board member, Alexandria Ayala, Superintendent Burke will be there as well. So I'm excited to have you and see you there too.
Well, un abrazo para todos again. This is a virtual hug to all of you. Con cariño. I wish you the best. I wish you much success. And sí se puede.
Sí se puede, señor. Muchas gracias. Te lo agradezco. Wow. So we hope that you enjoyed our amazing 3 and the world, right? And so again, we are not done. I look forward to seeing many of you this afternoon at Park Vista Community High School. We will continue the conversation. We are going to continue celebrando the culture, the contributions, the educational achievements of our Hispanic Latino students, all of our students, with a particular emphasis on our Hispanic Latino, because this is what our Institute is about. How can we better support them? How can we ensure that we are infusing Hispanic Latino history and culture into all the disciplines that we teach? And as well as how are we being able to support them with the much needed support that they now need more so than ever. So join us at Park Vista Community High School. We will be there. We're going to kick it off at 1 o'clock with our keynote speaker, Dr. Maria Armstrong. She is flying from Washington, D.C. She is the executive director administrators and superintendents. She's got an incredible story. You don't want to miss it. A former superintendent herself. And so I look forward to hearing it. I look forward to celebrating our students that are going to be representing Palm Beach Central High School, Okehili Middle School, Wellington High School. We're going to have a student panel, and we're just going to keep on going with the amazing accomplishments that our students have been able to do throughout the year. So once again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at Park Vista today at 1 o'clock. Hasta entonces. Adiós.